Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Humanities, Lecture 13, I believe. Shasta College, fall semester. And it's technically full now. The end of September ends in a couple of days, into October. Let's pray for rain, folks, because the fires are out of hand. They're moving west and burning lots of acres out in Igo, west of Reading. Maybe you live out there, hope you're safe. Now, all summer we've had to deal with the pandemic, no classes in the classroom, fire, extreme heat. We need some good rain, let's face it. Anyway, on that happy note, we're still here. We're still going. We still got things to do. Let me turn some lights on here. We've gone through World War II. Things changed big time in World War II. The whole world changed. We went to war, folks. And a lot of countries like Japan and Italy and France were very, very torn up by the war, physically bombed. And so their filmmaking was put on hold. But post-World War II, people want to start making movies again. You can't stop a good storyteller. And so a whole nother sort of film developed out of World War II in Europe I'm talking about right now. And that is coming at Italy. And it's referred to as Italian Neorealism, simply the new realism. It came to be a genre of films, a series of films led by a couple of filmmakers. Vittorio De Sica, who directed Bicycle Thieves, and Roberto Rossellini, who directed Open City. And those two films set a template for other films to follow. And those gentlemen made other films. And then Americans got to see these films. And it changed the way they wanted to approach filmmaking. It became more gritty and realistic, filmed on the streets, a lot of times filmed with non-professional actors. They needed to tell a story in what they felt was a more realistic way, not like a Hollywood story with stars and fancy cameras and fancy movie stars. They had nothing like that. They had no money. They barely had enough money for film stock. These films got out into the world. They got out into colleges throughout the country, which are starting up now, film schools, I should say, in college campuses, and in big cities, New York, LA, Chicago, the usual. We're starting to show these films to the general public, and it's the first time we got to see a glance at what post-World War II looked like. We'd only read about it, and of course we've seen it in the newsreels. They didn't have social networking then. Everybody didn't have a cell phone, so we only had to hear stories, mostly on the radio. And it was, to our best account, pretty much horrible, decimated cities, people living in rubble, people having very little food, no work, no jobs. And so these movies are depicting that in a dramatic story. And so they're two very, very important films in the history of cinema, world cinema, Hollywood cinema. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And then I'll talk briefly about the essays. There will be another essay. I'll sign it Wednesday at the end of this week. Toward Wednesday or Thursday, I'll sign another essay. That's going to be on a post-World War II film or two. You'll have to critique them, analyze them, figure out what makes them tick and why they changed the game. Which I'm trying, like I told you before, I'm trying to present one film for each decade. And so far we've done the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And today, these films here We're done in the late 40s, but I'm going to sign a film later on this week that was definitely in the 50s. And that'll be the fourth essay, I believe. We're moving right along. I hope you guys are moving along with me. I know we haven't talked about the book too much lately. I want to do that again on Wednesday. So start looking at your book. I think we're on about chapter 5 or so. I think it covers 1945 to 1955, something like that. I'll get back to you on that one. And I hope everybody now, 4 or 5 weeks into the class, has writing about movies. I keep seeing the same errors in the essays, and I keep having to bring this book up. Please read the book. It's going to help you write these essays. People are still telling me the plot of the movie, which is not what the assignment is. Talk about it in a second. I want to get off track here. I want to talk about Italian Neorealism. I'll assign a couple of videos for you guys to watch. It'll be in modules, so look at that on Canvas. One of them is it'll be in modules, so look at that on Canvas. One of them is you'll look at a brief. These are all 5-10 minutes long. It shows you a little documentary on Rome City and Italian neorealism, what it is, why it's important, why it's relevant. And then bicycle thieves, same thing. I use this thing on YouTube called Renegade Cut. It's pretty good. It's this guy, and he really dissects the films. Now, when you're looking at him, look at the films, look what he's talking about. Listen to what he's saying. See what he's showing. That's how your essay should look. He's breaking down elements of the film that make it important. He's just not telling you the story of the film. He's telling you what the camera is doing, what the actors are doing, what the direction's like, the themes, which is really important to understand a theme in a movie. Multiple themes, hopefully, if it's a complicated, well-made movie, not just one theme. For example, I'm just reading your papers on It Happened One Night. I'm almost done with them, folks. I'm getting there. And many people said, well, one of the themes is romance or love. Well, overall, it's not really a theme. There's love and romance in it, but it's mostly love that you can't have. It's unrequited love. It's love from two different class structures. That's the theme. He's a working class reporter. He's not on her level. She's a debutante, Paris Hilton socialite type. Not to put down old Paris, but you know what I'm talking about. They come from two different classes in our culture. Yes, there's romance. Yes, there's love. But really the underlying main theme in this is, can this wealthy woman give her love freely and wholly to a guy who is not in her social class? If you saw the movie, you know the answer. So that's where the war is. That's where the conflicts is in the movie. He's a regular guy who has to work for a living. Probably in those days was probably making $50 a week, if he was lucky, during the Depression, as a reporter who had to hustle to get a job. And she's on floating on yachts and eating caviar, and she's a spoiled brat who has a mind of her own. He changes because he doesn't like rich people. She changes because she saw another side to regular people. When they're on the bus, folks, what do you think is going on that bus? The bus ride, you see different poverty people. You see kids that don't have enough to eat. You see people being kind to each other. Then they break into song, and to try to get through the nightmare that they're all living through. They go to the hotel, and people are trying to help each other. And she's not used to that. She looks down at people who have to live like that. Not anymore, though. Then what he's learning is that maybe some of these rich, wealthy people have a brain after all. Maybe they have a soul after all, because she definitely does, and he wants it. And he's just not after her money. He refuses her money because he's prideful. There's another theme, pride. He's almost so prideful, it almost ruins him. She's going to marry the wrong guy out of what? Obligation to marry another rich, vapid, wealthy person. Why is she even doing that? Well, folks, she's trying to get out of her father's grasp. He runs her life pretty, controls her life a lot. There's another thing. How much parental control should you have before you let your child, your daughter, your son's free of you? But and then money's controlling everything. She doesn't want to lose the money. She can't work. What's she going to go do? Work in a dress shop? Probably not. Anyway, although she'd probably learn a lot of lessons. Anyway, so that's some of the themes that are going on in that movie that you can write about easily. Besides just saying, "Oh, it's a love thing." Okay, it's a love story, that's for sure, but I don't know if it's a theme because it's many layers of loving someone. Love is never easy, folks. It's not black and white. Even the film's in black and white, as many of you pointed out to me, and I got to keep saying this, they didn't miss color because they didn't have color. It's like the silent films weren't missing sound. They didn't have it, so they didn't miss it. They didn't know. They weren't going, God, I wish I could hear them talk. They weren't saying that. They were happy with what they had. And they were happy with black and white. That's what they had. Now, later on, that all changed, but it took a long time for it to change. People are making black and white movies until the 1960s. Easy. Every year, someone makes a black and white movie. Orson Welles, who you just wrote about in Citizen Kane, hopefully he wrote about it, said black and white is the truth. Now, you got to think, what does that mean? Well, because black and white gets rid of all the BS around you. It gets rid of the pretty sunset, the pretty clothes, the pretty cars. It makes everything black and white. It makes it, you have to pinpoint your focus on those characters and that story because there's no distraction. Nothing's worse when people talk about a movie and they go, how great the cinematography is. And you go, well, what about the story? Oh, but it was so pretty. God, did you see that great shot? Okay, that's fine. But there's more to a movie than a great shot of an ocean or a sunset or a landscape or a cool car crash. There's got to be more to it. There's got to be more levels to the story than that. I'm always afraid when people say, oh, I really like the music, that means they hated the movie. Because if they like the music, they probably hated the movie. If that's the only thing good they could say about the movie is they like the music, it's not a good sign. Anyway, so I'm getting off track here again. It's okay. It's Monday. Mondays are for getting off track. Anyway, please continue your patience from now until the end of the semester on how slow I am on the grading. Oh, my only excuse is I have no excuse. I'll just say it right now. There's a lot of you. I have 4 classes, almost 200 students. I have to sift through a lot of papers, and I try to give you all a fair shot. If you notice, I try to write something. If I like it, I won't write much. I'll say, good job, keep it up. If I see problems, I want you to improve, I'll put it in there. It takes me time to do that and to read all the papers. So on that said, that's why I'm so slow. Anyway, I could probably do 15 papers a day before I get so burnt out I can't even see the words on the page anymore. And you don't want that. So that's what I try to do. I try to pick 5 or 6 papers and go to the next class, do 5 or 6, and then I go to the next class. Anyway, so please bear with me. That's how we're rolling in this class. Where am I? Italian Neorealism. I'm going to sign those 2. Look for those 2 documentaries on Canvas. I'm not saying right now I will, but I probably will later sign more footage for you to watch in the documentary that you're all watching. I have a copy of it. This is the documentary that you're watching on, is it Canopy? Yeah. the Mark Cousins one, the one you probably hate his accent. Well, I don't know where we were. I have to go look, but I think now we're in about the 1939 to 52. I'll probably sign you that because it's the devastation of the war, what it did to the world and to cinema. And then you'll probably start. So that's part 5, and part 6 I'll probably have you watch when it comes how films were changing rapidly after World War II. The reason being, when filmmakers went off to war, successful filmmakers, some of them didn't live, some of them died. Leslie Howard was killed in the war. Wonderful actor who was in Gone with the Wind. He was a fighter pilot. He got killed, and but everybody came back affected. Nobody was unaffected from that war. They'd seen some things, they'd done some things, and they'd seen the savagery of humanity, and their films for the next 20 years were going to reflect that. They couldn't come back to Hollywood and just do the same old film, the same old song and dance, the same old fantasy that they'd been doing already for sheer entertainment. They had a story to tell. Great stories. John Ford, who had won Academy Awards for The Informer, and what else? Pat Green is My Valley, who had done Stagecoach, created John Wayne. He went to the war. When he came back out, they wanted him to film a new war movie called They Were Expendable, and they didn't like that title, folks. He said, well, I'll make a war movie, but you got to let me do what I have to do. I can't make a fantasy. I can't make a propaganda film. I've seen too much. If you want that kind of film from me, you got to hire somebody else. So he was willing to walk away from his career. So he made this movie called They Were Expendable. Think about the title, folks. About the very early on in World War II, the people who were driving in the Pacific, they called them patrol boats. They patrol PT boats. And they were small, fast boats that mostly transported things, but also attacked destroyers in quick runs. They had some weapons on board, a couple long-range torpedoes, and then they had to run like hell to get out of there. But because they were so fast, they could, but a lot of them were killed doing this really dangerous work. He said that's the story he wants to tell. And they go, well, okay, we want to write a movie. We want you to come back to work. And he goes, but I'm not going to end it like you want. If you want a happy face on it, hire somebody else. Now, it does end on a note of hope, but that's it. Because he's dealing with the early on Pacific War, which was won hands down by the Japanese, and he shows how we were on the run. And by saying they were expendable, meaning Washington knew that they were sending hundreds of guys out there to essentially be killed. They were expendable, you understand? So there's cynicism there and realism, and that all relates back to these Italian neorealism films who did not flinch an eye and try to make a fantasy fairy tale story. They needed to see something real, and so it looks grim. But it is entertaining. So Ford was changed. They're all changed when they came out of the war. And the next 10 years, the movies really showed that change. We'll talk about that more a little later. Right now, I want to stay on Italian neorealism, then I'll shut up. I'm going to sign a couple of these things on Canvas. You'll see it. They're just for you to watch and take notes. You don't have to write anything about them yet. But I would watch them and take notes. And I'd like to know how you're feeling about it all. So maybe we'll start a discussion on these types of films too. Anyway, so pipe in on the discussions also. You'll see it in assignments. Rome of a City is more of a straightforward story about people trying to survive the occupation of Rome with the Nazis. In the beginning of the war, Italy and Nazi Germany were allies. A lot of people forget that. Mussolini was a monster dictator who was very, very chummy with Hitler. In fact, Hitler copied a lot of Mussolini's trademarks. For one, where do you think the Nazi salute comes from, folks? And you know what I'm talking about. Sieg Heil. Where do you think that comes from? Mussolini. The Romans did it first. Hitler dug it, man, and he wanted to use it for himself. He dug a lot of what Fellini was doing. Fellini wasn't a Nazi, but he was what they call a fascist, which is a dictatorship that is run with an iron boot. And he had the iron boot. And as people got into the war, and Italians, they weren't the best fighters. He didn't have all the money in the world for the army, and they were pretty much ineffectual. We fought them, U.S. and British fought them in Africa and elsewhere, and they didn't do well, but they had Germany behind them, and finally they wanted out. And guess what they did, folks? They rebelled against Mussolini. They drug him out of his fancy house and they executed him and his mistress. They hung them, I'm not kidding, they hung them by their feet in the plaza so people could come by and spit on them. They hung down there for days. That's what they did to their dictator. After that, they were no longer involved in the war. And so Germany says, you're not with us, you're against us. Now we're going to bomb the hell out of you. And so Germany started bombing Italian cities. Germans, they're just a fun bunch of Nazis. And they occupied many, many cities with troops. And Rome was one of them. And so this movie's dealing with that occupation. When they were filming this, the occupation was still going on, folks. Hitler was dead. He killed himself in the bunker. The war wasn't over. They weren't quitting. The fight was out of them. They wanted out. Germany was done. And so there was some troops left in Rome. And in the movie, if you ever watch it or see any scenes from it, you can actually see troops off in the distance patrolling. That's real, folks. They would hide the camera in a building, an apartment, so that they're not being seen filming. And that's the real deal. So it has a documentary type look to it. And then they had this story about freedom fighters in Rome who are fighting against Nazis. And actually, the film is interesting, and it's very interesting. You should watch it just for enjoyment. Some great acting in it. But by Anna Mignani, who went later on became such a star, she won an Academy Award in an American movie. They brought her over to America. She spoke English very little, but she was so great in it. She had a really wonderful career, really earthy, sexy, but not in an overt way. In a real earthy Italian way. Earth mother for sure. And she became an international sensation mostly after this film here. But in the thing, they're chasing a Roman freedom fighter who's been messing with the Nazis, and they want him, and they're going door to door looking for this guy. And you think you've seen all the scenes where the Germans go door to door and they kick in doors. They brutalize people. They might even execute you on the spot if they don't like what you're telling them. Well, the interesting thing was the guy they send in, he's some captain or rather with his troops. He's kind of an okay guy. They didn't show him as a total monster. He kept apologizing. He goes, I know we're intruding. Just tell us where he is. We won't hurt you. They don't believe him, of course. He's sick of the war, you could tell. So all of a sudden we had a Nazi who wasn't so bad. And of course, there's other Nazis in it who are complete monsters. So we have the yin and yang of Nazis. We got the fanatics and the people who were probably fighting for their country, not for Nazis, which is natural socialism. They weren't fighting for Hitler. They're fighting for the country of Germany. But like I said, during the filming of this, right when they're filming this, Hitler had killed himself. So he was no longer a factor. And they lost the sense of fight soon thereafter. But we still had to go after him for a while. Anyway, so that's what's happening in Open City. And if you watch Open City, because all the adult males have most of them been killed off or imprisoned in concentration camps, and the women too, and they're mourning their men. And well, the ending of the film has hope, and it's all about children. Children who survived the war. And let me tell you, folks, we've never had that here in this country. So we don't know what that's like when you don't have enough food, you don't have shelter, you don't have heat, you don't have air conditioning, you have nothing. Running water, forget about it. The children learned how to survive in a tough environment. And the ending of the movie has hope because it looks like the children are going to be the hope of the future, which is how it usually is. There's no more men left. They've all been killed off. So the children are the hope. And so that film ends on that note. Bicycle Thieves is a really simple story about a guy and his son. He's briefly shown with his wife. He is trying to find a job in post-World War. The war's over. Rome is in shambles. It's been bombed. Nobody has jobs, food, running water, nothing. But he needs to work. He needs to put food on his table for his family. And so he gets a job. And he lucks out to get in a job because there's no jobs available. And the job is putting up posters around the town, advertisements. But in order to have the job, he needs a bicycle. Without the bicycle, no job. Because he's got to haul a ladder and a bucket. There's no cars, folks. Very few cars because nobody can afford gas. If there was any gas to have. So it's not like he could get an old pickup. Not possible. And so he had to have this bicycle. He gets the bicycle. For a few minutes, it looks like there's going to be hope. But the bicycle gets stolen. And for the next entire length of the movie, he and the little boy are out looking for his stolen bicycle. He needs to have that bike, or they were literally probably starved to death. And they see all the damage the war has done. And it's amplified because now they have no way to work without this bike. And so at the very end of the day, he can't find the bike. But he does see another bike. And in a moment of complete, utter despair, he steals that bike. But he's seen stealing it, and he's caught. And his son, who's 8 or 9 years old, sees him being caught. And the shame of his father being caught stealing a bike. That's why the movie's called Bicycle Thieves. But instead of arresting him, which a lot of them do, they let him go because they see the reason why he stole it. He was trying to feed his son. And so no matter what your beliefs are, law and order, sometimes you got to look past law and order and look at the humanity of each person. And the people in the movie looked past his trespass, which was thievery, because they saw why he did it. Did it excuse it? No. But was it a good reason? Would you steal for your family to feed them? I don't know. It's just a question you have to ask yourself. And so the movie ends on this note that the father is going to heal his wounds. Things are going to get better, hopefully. So, fun movies, not really, but they are entertaining. And in that movie especially, you'll see in the documentary, they used amateur actors. Nobody had any experience. DeSico loved to do that. He was a professional actor, movie star actually at one time. And he always said that the truth comes out of people who don't know what they're doing acting-wise. If they know what they're doing, they're hiding. They have tricks of the trade and craft. And he didn't want to see any of that. He wanted to see raw truth. And he gets it pretty much. So that's what these movies are about. Neorealism. The truth is coming to American shores soon. So Please, please, I'm telling my cat to shut up. She wants out and really bothering me right now. So, folks, cannot tell you how much you need this book. If you don't get it, your papers are going to be wanting. I know a lot of you wait to the last minute, very last minute. You have a whole week to do the papers. Nobody's doing a second draft of the paper, I could tell. Maybe you are. But there's some good writers out there, and I've made comments about it. Keep it up. Just keep looking at these films on a deeper level than you've ever looked at movies before. And I don't want anybody in the next paper to tell me that the film is in black and white. They wanted to do it in color. If only it was in color. No, folks, they want to do it in black and white. You got to trust me on this one. They want to do black and white. Even though they'd done Gone with the Wind in color, in it was great. And Wizard of Oz, great. But it's a long, difficult process, and a lot of them still didn't want to use it because they felt it was too time-consuming and bulky and awkward, and plus you needed a lot of money to do it also. The film processing is not easy with color as it is with black and white. So, on that note, it is Monday, the 28th of September. We're almost done with September, on to October, and after October, we'll go fast. I don't know when the class gets out, but probably not soon enough for you, but it goes by pretty fast, I believe. Anyway, keep up the good work on the papers. Look at these documentaries, take note, and be prepared for writing another essay this week. And I'm working on your essays endlessly. So on that note, you know how to get a hold of me. Some of you do. Text me, email. I'm here for you. Good luck. Enjoy these movies, will you? I love the comments I get on the papers when people say, they write, I've never wanted to see a silent film. I've never, ever wanted to even think about seeing a black and white film. But guess what? I was kind of pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed it. Oh, amazing. I hope you're enjoying some of this stuff, because this has been my passion. And the deeper I go into it, the more passionate I get about it. It's endless, folks. Anyway, maybe you'll get passionate about it too. Watch a movie. Enjoy it. See you next time. Shut up. No, you're not going in there. You're going out, though. Oh, yes. There you go. Come on. There's the door for you. Can't you leave me alone? You're going out. Yeah. Out you go. Wild blue yonder. You're going out. You are a pain in the ass. Go. Stay. Sorry. Go away. Go somewhere else, all of you. Oh, yeah. Go build a fucking grass in somewhere else.